because of this claim that they say they saw Jesus resurrected. Like there's something different that goes on there, that they're like, this is a miracle, right? Dead people don't usually rise from the dead.
So, what is your personal belief when it comes to the resurrection? What do you think happened? Do you have a belief, or do you just try to interpret the text and try to see what is the message?
Hey everybody, welcome to Truth Is with Steve and Tony. Hey, we've got a good one for you today. We're going to take a look at a conversation with Joe Rogan. As you know, Joe Rogan has kind of pronounced himself as an agnostic, I think, and he's been skeptical of Christianity and some different things, but he's had an interesting evolution over the past, I would say, year, as he's involved in conversation. He has a lot of people, Christians, on his program, and he's actually willing to talk about the concepts of Christianity. And also where his views, I've noticed in listening to him, where he would used to be that he would kind of shut the conversation down and say, well, you know, that's crazy, that's stupid, or something like that. He'd have a more condescending attitude about Christianity. Now he's really opened up conversation.
Seems like
No,
that's the secret sauce for Joe's success, really.
Yeah.
He doesn't shy away from long form discussions about various subjects that lots of people obviously find interesting. You know, and that's all he's really tried to do. I think, you know, some of the earlier interviews, he's been kind of amazed by the success of his own podcast, because that's all it is. You know, it's him and I guess his producer Jamie or whatever that guy's name is, you know, and they just outperform all these major media empires just by having, and it obviously shows that there's a tremendous market for honest discussions.
We love Jesus. We love the Bible. We love the truth of the Word of God. So, and this is a reaction video. So we're going to be, as we go through, we'll be stopping it. A lot of times people I know, when they watch these videos, are thinking, I want to hear that. Quit stopping it. Well, that's the purpose of the video. We're going to stop it from time to time. That's what makes it a reaction video. Here we go.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
Because of this claim that they say they saw Jesus resurrected. Like there's something different that goes on there, that they're like, this is a miracle, right? Dead people don't usually rise from the dead.
So, what is your personal belief when it comes to the resurrection? What do you think happened? Do you have a belief, or do you just try to interpret the text and try to see what is the message?
Well, I think so. As a historian, I do think it is a historical question. You have a guy who objectively lived, he objectively died, and then individuals close to his inner circle claim that they see him not dead.
Right.
Again.
This is a highly unusual activity.
Highly unusual.
Right. So, but it's hard when you're dealing with illiterate populations, you're dealing with thousands of years of time, you're dealing with an oral tradition, and then you have us sitting here talking about it in 2024, trying to figure it at the end of 2024.
I want to say something when he talks about illiterate populations, and I understand what he's saying as far as being able to write and read and things like that. It's true. A lot of the population didn't have those, but something that people do in our day and age is when they talk about historical people, and I don't think he's doing this here necessarily, but then they begin to question their intelligence. And I don't know what you think, Tony, but I find when I read things that come from some early writings that it seems like that their vocabulary and their intelligence is like way beyond what we see in school during this time. So intelligence is not an issue. Now, he's right. Like I said, many people were illiterate. They didn't read and write, and there was an oral tradition at that time. But I just want to say that historical old people in those early days doesn't mean they weren't very, very, very intelligent, though.
Yeah, I don't want to get ahead, but I mean, you know, I think what we're talking about here is the historicity of Jesus. Like how can we trust the biblical record? Can we trust the eyewitnesses? Can we
Sure.
trust the historians? Can we trust Roman history? Can we trust all the evidence, basically? So if we were going to trial, and we talked a little bit about this off the air. I've had friends over the years who have said, prove Jesus, with science. I'm a scientist, and these people are not scientists, but they kind of play the science card, and that science is very limited in what it can prove, and the fact that it can't prove anything that happened in the past.
Right.
So if something happened in the past, you can't use science, because science requires a hypothesis, first of all, and then you have to have observable and repeatable patterns that you can test with this the scientific
Right.
method.
Right.
So in order to determine truth from the past, you have to approach it from more like a court of law and search for evidence.
And eyewitnesses and things like that.
Exactly. Yeah. Did someone see this crime?
Yeah.
No. Is there a body? Nope. Is there a murder weapon? Nope.
And
wow,
then
that's tough to prove.
Exactly. And as a police officer, I can add this element to it. But then you have to look at the eyewitness's motive. You have to examine, would this person have a motive? Would this person have would they gain from lying, or would it be to their benefit to lie? In the instance where they talk about Jesus's crucifixion, the witness, to the contrary, the witnesses actually would be dangerous to agree and admit it, because at that time, particularly the Roman government, they didn't want it to be true.
Not to mention the Jews.
The Jews, you could be under penalty of death. And many of them, as a consequence, were martyred.
They all died, right?
They were martyred because they said, yes, it is true. So did they stand to gain? No, they stood to lose by their testimony. So it makes it even more compelling. In a court of law, a dying declaration, that's solid, man. That person has no motive, particularly if the penalty of their declaration is death. They have no motive to lie about it. They have motive to lie about it if it gains them their life. So that's what I'm saying. It was very compelling, the witness testimony and everything. Exactly what you said, Tony. Would it stand in a court of law? Well, these are the things that we have to look at. And this guy's very sharp. He brings a lot of those things into it.
Yeah, he's really
trying to figure this out. Literally the end.
Yeah.
Last couple of days. It's very difficult for anybody who thinks of themselves as an intelligent person who's secular to even entertain the possibility that someone died and come back to life.
And I get that. But we've already talked about the fact that we don't think that the only thing that exists is matter and motion. We as in you and I, right? Like, we believe that there's something else going on in this world that's a little bit crazy.
There's something else.
And that to, I think, exclude that, I think excludes something that you're kind of putting blinders on.
I'd say something about that.
And you do have, I mean, you're right in terms of all of these ancient conventions.
The electromagnetic spectrum, for example, it's kind of like magic, 200 years ago or whatever. If you stretched out the electromagnetic spectrum, the length of the Golden Gate Bridge, the light spectrum, which is the part that you and I can perceive with our senses, would represent 18 inches. So there are, like these guys are saying, I mean, there are a lot of things going on around us that I don't think we have the equipment to perceive.
Right.
Radio frequencies, microwaves, ultraviolet, infrared, you name it. There are a lot of things happening. And then you add into that the quantum world, the mathematics, theoretical physicists believe that there are at least 12 dimensions of reality supported by the mathematics, which I believe is actually the purest science. So we live in a world that the scientific world is now discovering is a little bit more complicated than our senses can perceive. And so to think that there's nothing beyond what we can, what do they say, matter and motion, I don't know that there are many people, even especially in the academic world, that think the world consists of nothing more than matter and motion. That's a tough pill for me to swallow too.
Yeah.
Just from a thinking about the way the world actually is.
Here.
There's a lot in the physics world on string theory that has to do with frequencies, and
Yes.
it talks about how the frequencies in music actually represents a lot of the realities and creative forces behind the way things are, which is a whole different, like you said, that's a whole kind of different discussion. But
Yeah.
I mean, I bring it up simply because, the old school thinking was, if it's not concrete, if I can't see it, smell it, taste it, and touch it, it can't
Right.
be. Well, I think we've crossed that line.
Yeah. Exactly. Here we go.
And the ways that things were spread around. But the Gospels are written in the lifetime of the eyewitnesses. And they're written in this period of time where you have groups of individuals who could have fact-checked those things. So,
How do you fact check someone coming back from the dead?
well,
How many people saw his body, right?
Paul says that 400 people saw him all at once.
400 people saw the crucifixion.
No, saw the resurrected
resurrection.
Jesus. Yeah, 1 Corinthians 15, Paul says that Jesus appeared to the disciples, and then he appeared to 400 people all at once. I mean, if we read the Gospel of Luke and the Gospel of Luke and Acts, so same author wrote these both documents, he says that Jesus was walking around teaching them for 40 days after he was resurrected from the dead. And so these are written within a time period when you have people who would have seen Jesus's ministry, who were there, say, at something like the feeding of the 5,000, who could have been able to verify or debunk some of these things that are being said. And you go from a bunch of scared guys who, because Jesus wasn't the only messianic figure who arose and claimed to be the Messiah.
Right.
There were a number of individuals both prior to and after Jesus, but they die and the movement dies with them.
Do you
That's something key he said there, that the Gospels, and I think he's already said this, I was looking something up, but the Gospels were written within the lifetimes of the eyewitnesses. And that's just a fact. And I've heard people that held the atheist view say, well, they were written centuries after, there's no eyewitnesses that were, that's just not true. That's not true. They were written contemporaneously with the actual events. And that's why, during the canon of the Bible, that's one of the key things that was considered. Are these writings contemporaneous with the actual events that they depict? Obviously, people like to talk about what you called it, the rumor mill game or the telephone game.
Playing telephone.
Yeah. Well, one of the first questions you need to ask in that, well, if you have 10 people in line and you're going to repeat this rumor, the first person is the one that got the correct information, right? So he's the key. And as the game is all hinges on, how accurately over those retelling, on number 10 is going to be the least dependable because he was further from the actual event or the actual information. So if you've got people that are writing that were alive during the time that it actually happened versus someone who wrote a history book that was centuries after it happened, then there's going to be a bigger disparity. And that's the key. The Gospels were written contemporaneous to the events. And I think that's so important to remember, contrary to what a lot of people claim.